Hi everyone, it's Atuksha from Simple Crowdfunding, and today I'm with Mars and Ed. And Mars and Ed did a raise through our platform a while ago. It's a Court Farm Road project. But what I'm going to do is ask the two of them to introduce themselves and to talk about their company and experience. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Glad to be
So,
here.
Miles, Ed, do you both want to briefly introduce yourselves and tell us about your company?
I am, yes, thank you, Atuksha. I am Miles Morgan. I am the father of Edward Morgan, who is my youngest son. I have a middle son called Bradley, who is also in the family business. And I have a daughter called Charlotte, who is also in the family businesses. I was originally employed from the age of 17 by George Wimpey Construction as a management graduate trainee. I was supposed to be becoming some kind of manager of some kind in the construction industry. They sent me to college, and then I got a job after being qualified by the civil service as a building surveyor. I was responsible for a budget and looking after government buildings and Ministry of Defence resources. When I left, when I was 24 years old, I was responsible for a large underground Ministry of Defence facility near Bath. I was allocated a parts of underground buildings there. But I always wanted my own business. So I started another business in my spare time, importing oil paintings from Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted a business. It's just, I've always wanted to run my own company. So as soon as I saved enough money up from expenses and savings with my wife, we looked for a business that we could run in our spare time, and we stumbled on a business importing oil paintings from Hong Kong and then selling them to the general public in hotels. We replicated and we ripped off basically an American company called Starving Artists that were established in America, and they brought their protocol over to England, and we went along to one of their cells and we worked out what was going on. So we copied it. We found out where the oil paintings were coming from, and we followed their business model, and we just set up in competition. And we did that in our area for about two years whilst I maintained my job. And we saved all the money up. I had no family money or no private investors. All the money was earned by my wife, and my wife Victoria, who was still my wife. We had our first child, who was Charlotte, and then at one stage, this was in 1986 or 85, it was thereabouts. I packed in the building surveying job,
Mm-hmm.
which was a good job and it was well paid, and I went into buying properties to renovate and to resell.
Mm-hmm.
They call it flipping now, but then we used to call it specking. It was called specking in those days, where we used to buy a
speculating.
No, specking. In Bristol, it was called specking. As the word we used to use. We used to buy run-down properties and then renovate them and then just flip them on and sell them. I did that for a while and kept doing the oil paintings business, and until 1988 we started buying larger properties in Bristol.
Mm-hmm.
And we started converting them into apartments and selling them and keeping them, and we were doing very, very well. But in 1988 we went into a recession.
Mm-hmm.
But that's another story. that's the start of the business, and then from then we've continued until I've just continued. I sent the children to university. They've all become educated, and one by one they have come into the business, not at my insistence. I've never wanted them to do anything that they don't want to do themselves. They came to work in the business, and they've stayed. And now I am semi-retired, but I say I'm semi-retired, but I'm not retired really, because I still seem to work all day. I don't pay myself anything from the businesses, but I do work all day, and I do enjoy it. It's because I enjoy it. I do really enjoy it. This is a passion for me. But I built the business up on my own until 2007. 2007, 2008. Remember, that's when we went into another crash. Anyway, at the hiatus, I was building myself before the children came in, about 150 units a year. I only did that for a couple of years. The business had got very big for an individual. Prior to that, I was doing 10, 12, 15, then 20. I only built up to, in 2007, 2008 to 150. So I built about 500 units, but starting at a low level, and some of them, the 150 units were converting large office blocks into apartments. They're not we're not saying 150 large £1 million houses, 150 individual apartments and small houses and 1-bed, 2-bed houses.
It's still 500 plus homes that you brought to market, isn't it?
Yeah, so, it's not a myth. I can prove all of this. A lot of people seem to doubt it, but it's true.
I think that's fairly substantial.
And we went into the recession. We traded into the recession. The business lost a lot of money, but didn't lose everything. We were still quite well off, not as well off as we were before, but we traded through it. We had to make some very, very difficult decisions, but we carried on trading in a much smaller way and just came out the other side. And then one by one, my children left university and they've come into the business, and we've been building regularly 20 houses, maybe a bit more a year, until Edward, about 2 years ago, after he'd been trained up and he knew the business, he decided that he wanted to become more independent, but within the umbrella of the family. And it was Edward who has progressed us over into private shareholders and crowdfunding, whereas before we had no shareholders. It was all done through retained profits and ordinary bank finance. It's now changing over now. The family does own, Edward doesn't, but the family owns a lot of land. I mean, I'm not Duke of Westminster, but we have a lot of land that is being promoted for large scale development in excess of 500 houses. We don't have the planning permission, but we own the land. But that could take another 3 or 4 or 5 years. In the meantime, the boys, Bradley and Edward, are continuing with the day job, and so Charlotte is on maternity leave, but we own construction companies that are main house building contractors themselves. So we've started doing some. Well, the boys have started doing some contracting for other people. I'll now pass you on over to Edward, if I may.
Absolutely, Ed. You're going to have to beat that, and you realise that. I'll follow it.
God, that was the longest introduction I've ever seen. You can't stop me, I can assure you. Yeah.
Watch out. Okay, so I'm Edward. Glad to be here. So Wow. So my journey in property, I suppose, started 10 years ago, and I've been a student. I've been someone who's interested in property ever since then. I grew up in and around the business, and I always assumed it was something that I wanted to do.
I didn't know that. I thought I was putting you off.
Well, I mean, yeah, I suppose it was always, well, when you're a child, you don't really know what you're going to do. You just
happens,
it just
doesn't it?
happens, yeah. But I remember always being interested in the business, and I knew that I think what my dad was doing was a hell of a lot more interesting than what my friends' dads were doing. So I thought, well, that sounds like. I mean, I like a bit of an adventure, so why not? Why not get involved and see what we can do? Yeah, I mean,
And
what I do now. What do I do now? I mean, I pretty much run the development side of the business. My brother handles majority of construction issues, and yeah, we all work fairly happily together, and yeah, we're going to keep on doing what we enjoy for the foreseeable future.
that's great. I'm going to come back to the growth projections and the opportunity in a short while. But I just want to come back to the company. So you have very defined roles within the company at the moment, don't you? Neither of you have mentioned the company name. So it'd be good for one of you to mention it.
Okay. Well, the family in various entities owns a lot of companies, but we individual companies, but the business, which incorporates lots of companies, we brand it as Beaumont Homes.
Yeah.
Beaumont Homes is the brand or the board that you'll see up outside the sites. But land ownership, properties are owned in different companies. We run three construction companies, and we run another company that owns machines and plant and things.
Can I explain why that is?
Yeah, let me finish. We also own farmland, and we own a couple of farms as well. But they're all encompassed within an entity that is separated out, and we have trusts and various company entities. But everyone knows us as Beaumont Homes. We don't know how it's formulated. That's private, but the brand is Beaumont Homes. But the construction is carried out by wholly family-owned construction companies, which subcontract the work back to ourselves with a JCT contract.
And it means you have the opportunity to control the workflow and the sites accordingly, doesn't it? It means you're more self-contained in that regard.
We don't rely on anyone. If someone lets us down, we can always get everything finished. It might take a bit longer, but nothing ever gets unfinished. We've never ever had a failed site in 35 years. Some sites have not made any money. Some sites have lost money, but they've always been finished. That is for sure. We have lost money, and we have had many challenges, but the sites always get finished, and
Always sold.
They've always sold. We've never ended up not selling anything. Everything gets, even during the recession, even 2008, 2009, I was still selling the products, but they just came down in value. So we don't rely on anyone. If our site, we buy a site and we own the site with shareholders now, and then we subcontract it back to other family members who protect the asset. They protect the asset, by controlling it. Nobody can hold the construction company to ransom, or nobody can stitch up the construction company with a dodgy contract administrator. There's a whole series of construction risks that we control. We control it because we've been there. We've been on the dirty end of the stick with many banks and contract administrators and people like that. We've gradually managed to nullify most of the risks, not all of them, but we control most of them now.
Right. Ed, I'm going to come back to asking, well, actually, I'll ask it first. So did you want to sort of explain why the company structure is as it is, or has your dad said what you wanted to cover?
I think he's pretty much covered it, but
yeah.
I mean, it's the companies are, or our group of companies are structured like that because of as a result of the previous recession. We found that this is a way of, you know, how I mentioned earlier, always prevent a fire sale, always prevent people having leverage over yourself. That's a way, by ring fencing assets away from trading companies. It's a way of protecting ourselves, protecting our wealth, protecting our shareholders. It's all about security.
It also gives my children autonomy. It gives them a sense of achievement. The construction companies are owned by them, so they can control that. I can watch over it and let them know, but basically it's a way for them to have hands-on experience.
Yes.
So so if I was to be ran over by the number 11 bus one morning, they just carry on.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I'm going to move to COVID in a second, but I'm desperate to ask this question to Ed. So, Ed, you mentioned that when you were growing up, you were you liked the look of what your dad was doing or your family was doing and wanted to get into it. So, you know how you get some kids who will have a toy digger or tractor to play with. Did you actually play with the real things? Did that sort of
I've got a memory, actually. I've got a memory. I've got loads of memories, but one that I can remember, well, I'll give you two. There's one when my dad was demolishing a big old farmhouse. Just before it was due to be demolished completely. He basically he let me have a pick of any tool I wanted from the container, and he said, "Go and have fun for half an hour." And I went around just smashing
anything.
Smashing anything I could, because it was just a bit of a you don't really ever get that opportunity to break stuff, do you?
It's so true. It's so
breaking
true.
windows and whatever, getting it all out of my system when I was maybe 7, 8 years old. Another one I can remember on a different site was I think I was sat on it on my dad's lap, and we were using a big excavator. I remember that being a memory. That was fun. I was being in a big digger when I was young, and I was sort of like, when some people, you sort of drive your dad's car on the beach or off road or something. It was just like that. Yeah, it's good fun.
That's really good. Yeah, I thought there must have been something like that in it. So, and then it just gets stronger and stronger from there, doesn't it? From those experiences when you're younger.
Yeah. There's loads of. We used to
work on a site, didn't you?
Yeah, we used to, on summer holidays, we used to work on the sites for a bit of fun, bit of extra pocket money. We used to, when we were younger, we used to get taken out if my dad was working on a Saturday, we'd go out and see him. Yeah, it's always just been part of the fabric of growing up, because
and the nephews, you got cousins. I used to take them out.
Yeah. I mean, it's very much a family business. Yeah, it was always it wasn't your business which you kept separate, and it was just the business was
Well, we've always built the houses we live in.
Yeah.
So this one
very
here we're
much.
living in, they were building it before we moved in. Been here 15 years now. So.
Oh yeah, and the houses we lived in were either renovated, converted, or built from scratch. So we've always been around building projects.
Well, that's really good. So you've experienced a lot because Beaumont Homes has been running for a very long time. So you've seen sort of ups and downs in the marketplace. How does COVID compare to what you've already seen?
Is this for me or Edward?
Either
Well,
of you.
you can talk. Why don't you talk about the recessions, the early ones that I wasn't involved with, 1988 and the one in the 90s.
The first real, the first real recession, real bad recession that I experienced when I was in business on my own account was in 1988, when the Conservative government ended double tax relief.
Yeah.
It ended up on a date. I think it was August 1988. I've got it seared into my memory. And on that date, if you hadn't got a mortgage, you lost your tax relief. So what happened was the prices went shooting up in the 2 years before, and then immediately after that, there was a massive downturn. If you look at the statistics, the prices dropped by 30%.
Wow.
Which is even more than the downturn, the drop in values we had in 2010. So the one in 1988 to 91 was an absolute horror, and most of my peer group did go out of business. We didn't, but we were wounded. But we had to just lose money and just carry on trading, and we had to sell properties and keep the money flowing, which we did, but it wasn't enough money to lose everything. It was enough money it was a lot of money that was lost, but we carried on, and then we were still standing, and then I just carried on in a smaller way and then built it back up again. And we went through into another, which is not a very well-known recession. There was another recession in about 2001. It wasn't a very serious one, but there were issues then. We went through that one, and then we hit the big daddy, as I call it, in 2008, 2009, 2010. That was a different type of disaster. It was one with the banks went bankrupt on me halfway through 4 developments.
Wow.
I had 4 developments half finished, and it wasn't me who got in the trouble. It was the banks themselves. So they withdrew the funding. But there again, we just had to burrow through it, and it was not a very pleasant time. And we just burrowed through it, and we battened down the hatches, and we finished all the sites without the bank funding. We finished the sites with great difficulty, and we did sell them. And we lost. Seemed to make, it's like a tick. You go up the tick, then you fall off the ski jump, then you start up again. So it's like a whole series of ticks like this.
Yeah.
But we just kept on going. And in 2009, 2010, my daughter left university, and we still have plenty of work. We had to lay a load of people off, but there was always enough work to employ my family and a core number of people, which we did. Lucky enough, we built that our headquarters and our offices and our yard, our farms were owned in a trust, so we never lost any of that. We lost money on sites, but we carried on. After that, there was a period of 3 or 4 years where the banks would not lend to us, but we we still struggled on. We didn't have investors then. We didn't have any shareholders even then. We were using, we were doing a joint ventures, or we were doing partnerships, or we had high net worth individuals with secondary loans and our own money. But the family is only 3 children and me. So, and we had a core of people. We've always been able to keep them employed again. So then we built up again. Off we go again. We're at the top of the tick again until we came to the Brexit. And then the Brexit was an almighty shock. I can remember waking up in the morning and thinking, what the hell has the country done? And I was really, really worried about it. I mean, I'm not saying I disagreed with the vote. My political affiliations are private, and didn't come into it, but I knew it was going to be bad for business. And it was terrible. It was awful for business again. That is 2016. That was. The sites again did suffer, and the values did come down. The values dropped on the sites, but again we carried on. But we judged that when the Brexit situation was resolved, which we guessed, we had to make a judgment call that we thought the Labour Party wouldn't get in. We thought if the Conservatives get in, irrespective of anyone's political affiliations, we thought that Johnson would push it through, and there would probably be an upturn in the new year, this new year.
Absolutely. So and that was basically having a direction for the country, wasn't it? Not necessarily one way or the other, but having at least a direction of travel. Yeah.
We couldn't buy any sites in 2018, 2019, because the values were dropping.
Yeah.
So we made a decision not to buy anything. But in November, December, just before Christmas, we went out again and started calling in the options and started buying again. Only to discover that in March this year, the one just gone, we were just falling off the tick again. We were looking like we were falling down an avalanche this time. So
that was just the biggest curveball going, wasn't there?
Yeah,
really unexpected.
We thought, well, great. We were at these sites, we were renegotiating them. Some of them we had to pull out, and then we were going for it. We thought, great, now we're going to have another go for another 4 or 5 years. And then the virus gradually became a bit more intense. And I remember it was the headline in the Sunday Times newspaper that said they expected 500,000 deaths. I woke up one morning and I read that and I put it down. I thought, 500,000 deaths in England? I couldn't believe it. I thought, even if they're half right, we're going into a pretty serious situation. So we had to stop all over again. So we pulled the sites again, and we stopped again. We stopped and retrenched, but carried on with the sites we had, which were not very many. It was only 3 sites, and we've carried on with them. We haven't stopped, and we've carried on with them.
One of the things that a number of developers are saying, so some of the sites where we've raised funds for are still progressing. A couple have closed, one of them being the Doctors Project, because the doctors have been called back in to help with the pandemic. So that's understandable. You're actually in an unusual position, weren't you? Because you already had stock, whereas some were struggling to actually get supplies and then ended up having to close sites as well.
Well, we saw it coming. I mean, we became aware of an impending lockdown about 2 weeks before, and well, we managed to get as much supplies as we could in that time. We made bulk bulk orders, and we got good relationships with our suppliers, so they made sure that we got what we needed first. And even during the worst of the lockdown, we were still getting direct. They were putting orders through direct to the factories where they could, where we could get.
We got storage space. We got
Because
farm buildings and barns.
because we've got storage space.
Yeah,
we've managed to carry on quite well. I mean, we've just been. One example is at one point the only materials you could get was direct loads straight from the factory. So we got up at Court Farm Road, Longwell Green. We had two roofs to tile, and so we luckily that makes up two houses worth of roof tiles is a lorry full, and we got all of the felt and the batten to come along with it, and that kept us busy for a good week or two. I mean, we've just been adaptable. I mean,
there was a period, wasn't there, Ed, when the lockdown really came into effect on one of the days. There was a period of about 2 weeks when all the merchants had closed down, and we actually ran out of bags of cement, and we thought, we never realised that you could actually not be able to get a simple £2.50 bag of cement. Now that took us by surprise. So we had to go out. We put messages on Facebook, and people we went out picking up individual bags of cement.
Yeah, I went out. I spent a day traveling around my local friends in the industry who had spare materials that they didn't need, and I just picked it up.
Wow.
I mean, there's a good community spirit. We wanted to carry on. We
were getting individual. I mean, on all the sites, we were actually driving around getting an individual stopcock or something. And if that would have continued, we would have been in a complete lockdown. But what happened was, we got in touch with the managers of the branches, and even though the branches were locked down, not open, gates shut, because we had good relationships and they knew our credit was good, they were still supplying stuff for us. They were still supplying it for us because they knew that we would honour the credit. So we were getting stuff. Now, bit by bit, it's become apparent that builders materials have been available. That the press have not been picking up on this, and the government seem to be using a lot of press media management. But the building industry for sites like ours have been continuing. Not very, it's not publicised, but it's been continuing. And if you can manage the government guidance, the working directives, the COVID working directives that we are adhering to, and if individual tradesmen and employees, if they wish to work, we never ask them because they might feel obliged. No one's obliged. A lot of them have got bored. Also, they need to earn money, and if they follow the guidance and they know the way we're working, we've continued. I'd like to pass on to Ed, and Ed can describe to you the working directives that are having to work to.
Yeah, sure. Well, so the most common, well-known one everyone knows about is the 2 meter, the 2 meter rule. I suppose most people, well, everyone's trying to keep to that as best as possible. The easiest way to do that is to work in separation. So what we've been doing, we've got a project in another part of Bristol where it's 10 apartments. We've been allowing one trade per apartment, so everyone's keeping their distance. It's slowed down progress, but it's the easiest way of controlling everyone's movements. And there's plenty of hand wash, disinfectant,
chlorine, bleach.
Normally we've got welfare facilities, but we've been well, we've
Have to close it.
closed the welfare facilities, except for the toilet, of course.
Mm.
People are having to eat their sandwiches in their van.
Yeah.
It's just quite simple.
They can't pass each other, which is awkward. And they cannot congregate.
Mm.
But there's less people on site anyway, so it's become
It's quite manageable.
manageable.
The sites that we're doing are all quite large, and there's the amount of people able to work. I mean, some of our subcontractors have chosen to furlough. I mean, with the amount of people coming into site, it's very manageable to keep the distance.
Yeah.
So it particularly affected us.
That makes a lot of sense, and we're hearing that from other developers as well, who still have open sites. So obviously keeping the distance and the other things that you've talked about are absolutely key. What was also interesting is some of the other sites are also saying that getting hold of stock, they're still getting it, or getting hold of supplies, it's just taking a little bit longer.
Yeah, you got it in one.
Yeah.
I think you've got a responsibility to the wider community.
Yeah.
We have to all play our part, and we follow the government guidance completely.
Yeah.
No one is being asked to do anything they're not comfortable with. There are face masks. We have alcohol. We clean the surfaces.
Not for
Everyone.
drinking.
Everyone. But when they see that we're doing it properly, it does. The confidence does build up.
Yeah.
You can have an issue if somebody on one of the sites does begin to exhibit symptoms. If someone exhibits symptoms, they can't go to site.
Yeah.
So people do know how to self-isolate now. And if we see somebody, with a runny nose or coughing, it's obvious. Everyone stares at them, basically. You're an outcast. You've got to go.
Oh, exactly. You're not wanted here.
You're not wanted here. No one wants to hurt their family or the community or anyone. That's the most important thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a temporary measure anyway, isn't it? And it just keeps everyone safe. So why wouldn't you?
We're very confident we will see this through. We're very confident the government, the country will see it through.
Yeah.
We're very positive.
Yeah. Mars, I wanted to come back to the piece about it started. So once we knew the election result, the market did pick up. And actually January, and you had started looking at sites and calling in options and things. With COVID hitting, I know when we spoke last, you were saying that you've gone back to some of the sellers as such. So can you talk a little bit about how that's changed and what you're doing?
Well, if an option agreement is coming to crystallization, is coming to actually the point where we have to pay the money over, if that was coinciding with the depth of the lockdown, that was an impossible situation, because the valuers at one stage said they weren't going to value, and the solicitors stopped working. So it's practically impossible to deal with the completion, the transfer of the money, the valuation, the monitoring surveyors, the QSs, the estimates. You just couldn't do it. If the completion, the physical completion of the dwelling or the block of apartments, if it say was 12 months ahead, say May 2021, we could take a view that probably there'll be a downturn in the next 6 months, and then probably in 12 months' time, the prices would have probably come back up somewhere to what they were just before Christmas in 2019. We took the view that even if they didn't fully come back up and they were 5% lower, we could still manage that, because we don't necessarily sell all of our finished products. We keep some of them. So we never have to sell everything. Also, bear in mind, we make a profit and we make a salary and a decent return purely from the construction.
Yeah.
We can live quite happily on the construction, and the profit is not a bonus, because but even if the profit is halved at our risk, okay, I know the risk profile's got to show 20%. Very few sites actually end up making 20% profit margins. That's a myth. You've got to put it in the appraisals, but it very rarely happens anyway. I mean, it might do, but 20% profit margins on a £2 million site are unrealistic. That's £500,000 profit, which would be very nice if you could achieve that regularly. But no matter what you read on the Facebook, it doesn't happen in reality. So even if we were only to make 10% profit and earn a good wages from doing the construction, I mean, what's not to like? But what couldn't be achieved was the 20% risk profile that you need to show to get the sites funded. Even though it's not practical, you still got to show it.
Yeah, although I suppose it depends how it works. So, you know, 20% for us is something that we would typically look for as well, but completely understand the market is different at the moment. And so it's then looking at the whole package. So whilst it may be lower than 20%, it's understanding, does it have multiple exits or other ways for investors to ultimately get out of the project should they need to. So
the first charge lender have got strict criteria, and they are adjusting, but they weren't adjusting, or we didn't know if they would adjust. We couldn't take the risk. They for a period of 2 or 3 weeks, we thought that main high street banks were going to pull all their funding. So when we could be exchanging our properties, and as you know, a high street bank are allowed to not fulfill their completion obligations. If that happens, it's very difficult to take a bank to court. Basically, you kiss your deposit goodbye. So we didn't. We went to all these people, and the sites had been optioned up in the previous year, and some of them still do work, but some of them didn't. We went to everybody and we asked if we could renegotiate. Some did, some would delay. The ones who couldn't, because they had their own pressures, we had to agree to cover their legal costs and try and treat the situation as sympathetically as we could. But we couldn't proceed, and we had to pull out of some sites that may have required completion now. As it happens, now is not as bad as we thought it could be, but it might have been.
Yeah, absolutely. And 6 weeks ago, it was just unknown in terms of how this was going to progress. So that was one thing. But I also, even now, we still don't know how much longer it's going to take to even start coming out of it. I know there's expectation for this coming Sunday, so that was what the 10th or thereabouts, in terms of having some guidance from government as to whether or not some of these restrictions will be lifted, but we just don't know at the moment. So it'll be interesting to understand.
The main risk for us that we were concerned about is, having seen how the banks acted in the last recession, we couldn't let ourselves or our investors get into that situation, which the banks, we managed to fight them off in 2008. But you don't want to get yourself in that situation where you start a development and then they call the money in. You know, how can you sell a development which hasn't even been built yet?
It's true.
I mean, it's clear that banks are very well capitalized now. Okay, the banks are not in the situation they were in 2010. Okay, but what they did then has left us a scar burnt into our backbone. The situation now is a different kind of issue. It's a situation where it's not the banks causing the problem. There's no shortage of money. It's just that nobody can go out and buy the product. It's a completely unforeseeable, unknown situation.
Yeah.
If people have got to sell, you might be in trouble, but we're not selling. Our sites, for the next 12 months, we're just going to be doing building and keeping until we can know what's going on. We're just building in them. There's no sales risk.
Well, we do have some sales risk.
We might sell, if we got a site for say 10 and we sell 3 or 4 of them, we can keep 6 of them.
Court Farm Road. I mean, the exit option is to sell.
Or we could keep one, but that's not going to happen because they're popular. They're going to be okay there. One's already under offer anyway.
Yeah.
Remain flexible. But going forward, I mean, I've got a site that I'm going to be doing. That's going to be to keep. So there's a much lower risk profile. So I'm comfortable to go to crack on with that, no matter what, in the next coming months.
Oh, that's really good. And with regards to just going back on one point for the option agreement, so some have just extended the length of the option to accommodate for what's going on in the market at the moment.
Yeah, we've negotiated extensions.
Good.
We've negotiated reductions in price. We've negotiated slightly different terms, which are more flexible for us in these uncertain times, allowing us to preserve our cash. It's to be fair, most vendors have played ball, played fair. Most people understand that it's not business as usual right now.
If someone's got a bit of land and they've sold it to us for, say, I don't know, or it was like £500,000. I mean, £500,000 now is very nice, but if they still get £500,000 in 12 months' time, they're still going to be very well off, aren't they? Yeah. What they don't want to do is lose it. If you've got money in the bank at the moment, that's not even safe in the bank at the moment, because the Bank of England are allowed to turn deposits into shares. So we know people who've got a lot of money, and they'd rather have it stuck to the ground in form of a bit of land with planning permission, or a building. Nobody can take a building away.
Exactly that.
If it's paid for, they can't take it away, can they?
If you own the asset, then the money's used in that asset, isn't it? So it's not available for anything else. Yeah.
It might go down in value, but you'll only realise the loss if you sell the asset.
Yeah. You only realise the pain if you sell, if you can hold.
They can take money out of people's accounts. They took it out of people. We know somebody who had a lot of money in a bank in Cyprus, and they took 20% of his money, just took it out of his account and left him with the rest. And he wasn't very happy.
There is a view, or governments do have the ability to be able to do that. It's just not very well known, is it?
It's in the Bank Act 2013. They can convert deposits into shares.
Yeah, I'm very aware of that. So COVID has obviously been an interesting time for everybody, and you've talked a lot about the effect it's had from a construction standpoint and so forth. Has there anything come out of it? So having reviewed your business processes, your entire operation, and having the time, I suppose, to take a different view of that, has anything come out that you think, actually, I really like that, and we will continue that moving forwards? Have there been sort of any light bulb moments for you?
I think unanimously, even without prompting each other, we're going to say it's IT, Zoom. We've had so many Zooms. We knew about Zooms, but now we've been forced to use it. We can't see we're ever going to stop using it.
It's good. Yeah, we're going to implement IT more going forward. It's been really good for keeping communication. mean, before phone calls and Chinese whispers
And traveling places.
Traveling, you know, it's getting everyone on a video call has really helped. Something that we're going to keep doing very regularly. And
we've had contract managers, contract administrators, QSs, all about 10 people, whereas we'd all have to travel somewhere and sit in a cramped cabin. It's also a lot easier to negotiate when you're sat behind a laptop. When you're sat in the table in front of somebody,
you can share a screen as well.
Yeah.
You're sharing a screen, so you're all looking at the same information.
You don't necessarily want to rip someone's head off as well. I mean, it can be very adversarial getting a site finished. I'm not suggesting for one moment that I want to rip someone's head off, but you can get very annoyed and angry, and body language is not very helpful when you're face to face.
Yeah, and also it just saves so much time, doesn't it? Because you're not traveling everywhere, and people can still have the same experience. And well, they can't have the same experience, because I remember with Court Farm in February, it was blowing an absolute gale, wasn't it? But and that was part of the charm, the fact that people were still there for 2 hours and just talking and getting the information.
Oh, it's not as good as the real thing, but
yeah.
I mean, in some cases, it saves so much time, and it's so convenient. And we've had people self-isolating, but they can still be involved in decisions which would have been difficult otherwise. And I think we've appreciated our homes more.
We're working even harder now. We don't spend half an hour sat in a car in the morning.
Yeah, I think we're appreciating our home space and trying to make that as nice as possible, because we've really enjoyed being able to work from home.
I never personally, Atuksha, would have sat on the patio doing business. I would always feel guilty and conscientious that I'm not really working, even though it's just in the mind. Okay, I would always have to leave the house in the morning
to do a phone call,
to go somewhere and sit somewhere else, because it felt like I was going to work. But when you can't do that and you're forced to sit on the patio in the sun working, you think, well, I'm not sure if I'm really working, really, but you are, aren't you? You are.
And it's very focused, but you're a lot more relaxed as well, which is a wonderful thing, isn't it? So it was really funny. I was talking to someone this morning, and he runs property education events globally and has probably 1,000 people per event. So they're pretty substantial. And he said, I've taken the whole thing online, and actually I've realized I don't actually need to be traveling around the world online. And he's absolutely loving it.
I think there are many benefits to, well, there are some good things that have come out of this. I don't think the country will ever be the same again.
I agree.
I don't mean in a bad way, personally.
I think it's a positive.
Positive,
Be interesting to see how many large companies in the city centres realize they don't need so much office space in the middle of town. I mean,
we might be able to take advantage.
Of that. I mean,
people might want to come and rent some barn space. You know, who wants to drive into a city? If we can turn some of our barns into little hubs on the edge of the city, we get blistering broadband speed. We could try and move. You've got to be flexible, really. We've got to be adaptable. Got to move.
The traffic into Bristol in the morning is an hour. Normally it's an hour in, hour out. I mean, a lot of people are going to realise that they can avoid that, and that's and obviously, and the people not using offices means that we could potentially buy them and turn them into residential. So that's
it's going to be structural changes.
There'll be some changes.
I think it's over a space of a year or so. I don't expect to change, but if in business you've got to watch out for these trends, and that's my best instinctive guess at the moment. That's what's going to probably happen. I also think personally that tradesmen and skilled people wages are going to go up because when the lockdown ends, there's going to be a lot of people out there who need a lot of work done very quickly.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if carpenters and plumbers, electricians start charging more money. But you've got to be aware of that as well. And you may not be able to get anybody.
Yeah. Well, we're expecting hairdressers to go up double their prices, right? Straight off the bat. But I take your point, and also there's been a lot of movement because just before lockdown properly started, a lot of people were either going back home to where family are and things like that as well, weren't there? So I think there'll be a readjustment on that basis as well, which would be quite interesting to see.
Yeah, I think so. Well, we've definitely changed our working practices, and it was annoying to begin with, but we've got used to it. So we've been forced to change.
Yeah. For us, it's I've seen a lot of positives come out as well. The fact that there have been so many crowd raises of sort, you know, for good causes, and the whole community is just coming together to help each other, which is the beauty of what crowdfunding is about. And you tap into what you love to do, and you know, you can back something that you truly believe in, and so it's raised profile in that regard, which is a wonderful thing. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. So
a lot of community spirit fostered, strength through adversity.
Yeah, that's right. It's been a lot. The people around us have been very, very helpful.
And
we've been helpful to them.
We've felt very supported.
We have felt. I'm not going to knock the government. We do feel supported by the government. I'm not a tribal politician, or I'm not attracted to any particular political party. I'm not saying I particularly like Mr. Johnson, but the government, I think, have played a blinder here. I do, and I like to give them the credit for that.
Yeah, they're stepping up and they're helping out, which is a good thing, right?
It's a good governance. It is. I mean, I think they've done. Well, they are supporting us, so that's it.
Yeah, and our current lenders, our current batch of lenders, have all continued supporting us, and they've been good as gold. They've all stuck to their words. So yeah, we're happy with how we've been treated.
We're not disgruntled. That's it. Sometimes in the 2008, 2009, I was very, very annoyed, very bitter
with the treatment. But now we by all accounts, we've been treated well as business people.
Yeah.
And it's everyone helping everyone. The fact that when you needed cement, people just stepped up and said, "I've got this. You can come and take it," and you've probably done the same.
And we've reciprocated as well.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's what it's about. It's everyone helping everyone, isn't it? So.
Definitely. We're all for that. Yeah.
And then in terms of, no one has a crystal ball. I absolutely understand that. What are you expecting, or where do you think this is going to go? Ed, I know you sort of mentioned 6 months or thereabouts, and then things should start moving maybe a little bit, but is there anything that you're seeing or you're sort of planning for the next few months?
I think it's our gut feeling that there's going to be a slight dip in house values, because there's going to be less transactions, there's going to be less comparables to be used. There's going to just be a bit of a property transactions are going to be still stuck in the mud for a few months yet, and it's going to take some time for confidence just to get people out of their houses and getting back to normal life.
The danger, in my opinion, is that first-time buyers don't have to buy. I mean, they might be living with their parents. If a first-time buyer thinks that the property he wants is going to be worth less in 6 months' time, it more than likely wait. Nobody wants to buy their first property only to discover they could have bought it 6 months later for £10,000 less. Okay, if that happens, there could be a tailspin. There could be the market always overshoots on the downturn. It goes on beyond what is
The
reasonable.
market always overreacts.
Okay. Now, if that happens, I'm not sure what will happen, but my guess is that won't happen because the government can't afford. Well, the economy depends on the housing market, transactions keeping going. No government stays in power during a prolonged property downturn.
I think
also money is not expensive
at the moment.
At the moment. If you've got to sell, if you're a forced seller, okay, that's different. But there's not going to be a mass forced sell of property. There has been periods when there's been forced sales in 2000, in 91, 92, 93. We had an area.
All the mortgage holidays and their support from the government. There's going to be a lot of pressure from the government for their lenders to behave responsibly. So I don't think there's going to be a forced sell, which causes the real
pain.
Spiral downturn in house prices when a glut of fire sold properties hit the market.
That's a nightmare scenario. We had an area around here that was developed, not by us, it was developed by Wimpy, a big whole area on the outside of Bristol. It was called Bradley Stoke. It was 3,000 houses. And in 1991, 92, the whole estate went into negative equity. Some people don't realize that. That's what can happen. Prices dropped by 30%, okay? And the whole estate went into negative equity. Now, they changed the name. It was meant to be called Bradley Stoke, but they turned it into Sadly Broke. Everybody was sadly broke.
It's still known by that name.
It's still named now, Sadly Broke.
Sadly Broke.
And it took 5 years. Okay.
Sadly Broke.
Now in 2000,
crazy.
it took 5 years to recover from that, and people lost their deposits and everything. They were okay if they kept the house, but if it was repossessed, they lost everything.
Yeah.
In 2008, 2009, although the bank crashes, there were not very many forced sales, and subsequently, the market did go down, but it didn't crash anywhere near as what can happen in a forced sale scenario.
Yeah.
They have these forced sale scenarios in America. They're brutal over there.
Foreclosures. They love a foreclosure, don't they?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But that's because people were doing 100% mortgages, and even in the Netherlands, they were doing 110% mortgages at some point.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
That's not going to happen. I bet a steak meal that's not going to happen this time.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a downturn, but not a horrendous one, unless there's a tailspin. If there's a tailspin, the government will have to react.
I think they will. This government has shown that they're gonna react. I believe if the housing market needs some stimulus,
they're going to do it.
They're going to do it. They're going to drop that stamp duty.
They've become accustomed now to raising money on the quantitative easing. The government's got a very high credit rating. The government can get money and they can create money, and if they realise they can manage it a slightly different way until they've managed it in the past.
Yeah.
Could even be in previous generations. I mean, in America before the Second World War, they had a thing called the New Deal. If you've ever heard of it, they actually stopped bankruptcies and they recapitalized and they wrote off 60% of everyone's debts. Yeah, can you imagine that? And they stopped all the gold became owned by the government. You weren't allowed to sell gold. Things can happen. I'm not saying that's going to happen. If you're caught in the middle of that maelstrom, yes. But we don't. We plan not to bring our stuff to market until afterwards, or when the worst is over. and we're not going to sell
Yeah.
anyway. So
It's true. I had an interesting viewpoint from one of the conversations I've had. That was for those who are renting at the moment, and you know, if for people who've been put on furlough, whilst they're getting 80% of the salaries, maybe they're spending a lot less because everyone's stuck at home.
yeah, that's right. We
And so then it's like,
they're better off, aren't they?
actually, we could be doing quite well here. And the other thing was, there's been talking to agents and others, there seems to be an increase in the demand for properties with land and with big gardens and things like that, because people being cooped up, they're like, we don't want to be going through that again and not have any space. So
This present lockdown economic arrangements cannot continue.
yeah.
It's not just not affordable, and it will have to change. There's going to be a lot of people who don't need this money are going to be taking advantage of it, unfortunately. That comes with the territory. It's gradually going to have to be reduced over about 3 or 4 months. But the roads are getting filled back up again. People are just going back to work anyway. The lockdown is breaking down just organically, for want of a better word.
It's so true. I've noticed that as well. It's just so much busier everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a bit weird. So
If there's allowed.
If there's allowed, everyone's self-interest to get back to work and secure their own future, which is what everyone's going to do. Everyone's going to be trying to get themselves out of the uncertainty.
Yeah. And so from a looking forward standpoint again, I know that you do have sites you're evaluating and things like that. So from a crowd standpoint, is it something you think you might, how has the crowd experience been for you? And is it something that you think has worked and sort of allows you to do more if we were to hit environments like this again?
Well, yeah, I'll let Edward answer first. We have now we know a bit more how it works, and we can see the advantages, and also there are some disadvantages which we'll tell you about in a moment, but they can be managed. We will. I think the boys will want to do some more. Well, they do want to do some more, but they've got issues that they will need to address. Privacy is one. Also, on a public platform, you're publishing all of your private information. But we have had people going around trying to get the sites, things like that, which is we didn't expect that. So
there's all.
Also, vendors who you've got optioned up on sites can see all the figures behind what you're offering them, and when they can see you're making a big profit, they want to change their mind. Funny enough,
there's certainly ways that there's we want to keep doing crowdfunding, and we see it's got great possibilities. We're going to fine tune exactly how we do it so that we get the benefits and not some of the disadvantages, i.e. people basically stealing our trade secrets.
Also, bank, we've learned that the first site we did, the bank, who were very helpful, were learning, and it took 2 months of them finding their way before drawdown, which we never expected. So we're going to make sure that doesn't happen next time.
There are a lot more banks who better understand what the marketplace brings. And I recall having a conversation with you about, people trying to take sites and you being able to share your information in a controlled environment. And actually those things are all possible to manage. So, there are
vendors, solicitors going on to public platforms and seeing all the information,
Yeah.
and then telling their client not to proceed.
Yeah.
Excuse me. The class
So for some of that, it's like there are ways to hide information.
We need to be more selective. Yeah, it's definitely crowdfunding has definitely done what we intended to do.
Yeah.
It opens.
Oh no, we're 100% behind it. We're going for it.
Yeah, it's been good for us. We wanted to meet new people who wanted to invest alongside us, and it's provided that. So I'm not going to criticize it.
No,
So
I'd probably recommend it if you know what you're doing.
if you know what you're doing,
Yeah.
Don't fall into the trap of thinking this is an easy game to be in. It's very, very complicated.
No.
I suppose raising finance in any market is going to be challenging, especially for the first time of going through it. But once you have a model that works, then it does become easier. And the other thing that I know people have loved about Court Farm is the learning elements and the site visits and being kept up to date and things like that. How has that been for you as the developers?
Well, luckily, Bradley, my middle son, has just come back from Actually, I forgot to say, Bradley was in lockdown. My middle boy, he was in lockdown because he had been with somebody who'd had shown the symptoms. So we lost Bradley for 6 weeks now. And he only came back working part-time about 3 or 4 days ago. And he went out and did the report on the site.
Yeah.
So we're all beginning to understand now. We think we've still got a lot to learn how this works, and how we've got to adapt our offering to iron out any issues.
I think the fact that people have been on site, they've been very interested. You've been very forthcoming about the information you've shared to investors, and ultimately you are keeping people up to date. That's what they want to know, isn't it? So
we're doing the best we can.
Yeah.
I think part of our charm is that we're a builder developer first and a fundraiser second. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who are virtual developers or salespeople first and developers second. We're definitely the builder developer first, and we're not really salespeople. We're just people who
we're not so good at the selling, but we got to get better at the selling.
Yeah, we're not salespeople. I mean, if we were happy with our business before, so for us, this is a way of improving our business, and we think it does improve things for us. So we're going to keep going with it.
I think we're going to show people that we do what it says on the tin.
Yeah. And that's what's really important, is just being real about it, isn't it? And saying, this is what it is, this is what we can do, this is what we can't do. It's what
we've always done. It's what we've always done. 35 years of delivery. We've never failed to finish a site.
Yeah. Never. I'm very excited. I know Court Farm is progressing well. I'm really looking forward to seeing the end products as well. And I know once lockdown is done, we're going to be probably doing another site visit, right, with you?
Yeah, great. Yeah, no problem.
But in the meantime, I know you're talking about doing a video on site anyway, and then there'll be a webinar for
that's what we're planning amongst ourselves is to do a video on site, which would lead to a webinar with investors, so we can have some interaction with people and take questions, and then following that, I suppose we just need to gauge the opinion at the moment as to when we can have our site visit again.
Of course.
we're always
I think we'd like to get the scaffold down.
yeah.
Go inside then.
When the lockdown's over and normality has resumed, we'll definitely do another site visit.
That's great. And then
We'll be-
if people want to just find out more about you, where's the best place to go? Is it the Beaumont Homes Facebook page, or where would you send people?
They can they can go to our Facebook page, yeah, Beaumont Homes. They can go to our website, which is the same again, Beaumont Homes. They can add me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
They can add me on Facebook. I'm pretty active and very open.
We've got a lot of sites not all sites, but we've got a lot of stuff on the website. It's not a finished product, but bit by bit we're adding more to the Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's fine. I'll add the links in the description, or not the links, but the details in the description. So it should make it easier for people to find you.
yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to share? I appreciate I've taken a lot of your time, but it's been a really interesting conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you. No, we've enjoyed it as well. Thank you, Atuksha. You've been very helpful to us over the last 18 months.
Oh, you're very welcome, and hopefully it will just continue. And when we're out of this craziness, we'll be able to sort of start helping more.
Definitely.
And getting back on track, right?
Yeah, very much. We're very positive. We're gonna pick up where we left off just after January, and we're gonna make a success.
We're gonna move on with determination and confidence. And whatever can happen, we can deal with it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you, Atuksha.
Thank you.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.